Welcome back to Rides and Drives Team Radio. I'm Harvey, she's Kaz, and we're here after having watched a surprisingly entertaining Detroit Grand Prix. I think we were all a little concerned that the track might not provide a lot of passing opportunities, but they managed to figure it out. That is not to say that the race wasn't without some controversy, though.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot racier than I expected it to be. I saw a lot of really great looking on track passes, which I love. But of course, it being Detroit, there are going to be yellow flags. And something that I heard before the race today is that before today, 33% of laps ever run on that course were run under caution. So while we didn't quite hit that 33 today, and we'll talk about that later, we still saw plenty of cautions. There were, hang on, I believe six
Yes.
different cautions. Yes, six different full course yellows at various points throughout the race. They were spaced out pretty evenly. And as you guys know, something that we've talked about over the last couple of weeks is IndyCar either, you can say changing, but I feel it's more like clarifying their policy
Right.
on procedure for throwing yellow flags. And essentially what IndyCar has told us is that moving forward, pit windows will not be a factor in deciding whether to throw a local or a full course yellow. Local yellow, you can still use the pit lanes so you can get your cheap stop. With a full course, nope, you're closed. You have to stay out on track. And if you were depending on a pit stop there, you are stuck and screwed. Sorry,
And
guys.
yeah, until they open the pit lane. The other thing about a local yellow, you throw a local, you only slow down at that part of the track
Hmm.
where the incident has occurred. And there were a couple times today where, well, at least one time today where maybe, it was a spin and both cars got going very quickly after that. There was no debris on the track. And they sat behind the pace car for 4 or 5 laps after that.
Yep.
That easily could have been, let's throw a local yellow, let's get them rolling again, let's keep racing.
Once they're
Um,
moving, we'll
yeah,
remove the
once
local
they're,
yellow. And what that does essentially is once we've got the full course caution, the field is bunched up behind the pace car. Any lead that anybody has built up that maybe they were banking on using for their pit stop after it, now suddenly that lead is gone. So look, I think I think everybody who watched the race heard Brian Herta's comments.
yeah,
He said, I guess we're throwing a yellow whenever a hot dog wrapper blows onto the track.
yeah,
Okay. What maybe a lot of people haven't heard was Kyle Kirkwood at the post-race press conference. He was also highly critical of a couple of those being full course yellows. Now, Kyle had the most to lose. Kyle is a guy who lost a pit stop time's worth of lead because of a yellow flag being thrown that he feels could have been local. So obviously he's upset about it. Um, but then we heard Graham Rahal,
right.
who was one of those guys who got the car rolling again after hitting the wall. Seemed like everything was fine. But what he said was, I was so happy for the full course yellow. I was in a blind corner. And the entire time I was getting the car rolling again, I was worried I was about to get T-boned. So I was really happy to know that they had done whatever they could to keep everybody alert. And I don't know. Harvey, help me
Yeah.
out here.
Well, I think in Graham's case, when he was spun in the hairpin and people are coming down that straight, you could technically have thrown a local yellow there, and but you have to make sure that people slow down for that, right? And um, when you throw a full course yellow, everybody slows down
Mhm.
right away, and the field gathers up. So I think it depends on the precariousness of the issue. And part of what it was with Graham, he had to let 8, 9, 10 cars pass him before he
Mhm.
could get going, right? That moved him way to the back of the field, which makes his run today that much more remarkable. But that I think that was one where I think Yeah, you could have thrown a local, but a full course kind of makes sense there. I
Hmm.
think the one later when the one that Stingray Rob just managed to get around and get through, and both
Hmm.
other cars got going right away, and there was no traffic coming. There was no, race control knows where all the cars are on the track. And if they saw that those cars could get rolling and did get rolling right away, they could have kept that a local yellow, much like what happens when Formula One. You have someone spin in a corner and they get back on track. It goes yellow for just a minute and then they get rolling. Uh,
Hmm.
I know this new officiating crew is trying to find its feet. They got a lot of criticism at the Indy GP, leaving Rossi out there in what many people, many drivers, and the media both felt was a precarious position. And yeah, Kyle was critical of us for criticizing that, which felt a little disingenuous.
Yeah, I think what we have here, maybe I'm just like bristling a little. Maybe I'm just feeling a little prickly. I think what we have here is a two things can be real situation. It's one of my favorite phrases. Two things
Mhm.
can be real. Alex Rossi was in an unsafe situation. Race control should not use, oh, but we have a pit window coming up as a reasoning for not closing a course they would otherwise close.
Right,
But they can still utilize local yellows.
right.
I don't think any Kirkwood did get quite critical of both media and a few other drivers, and he didn't name any names, but he said, "This what did you expect when you put so much pressure on them?"
And
And I don't think anybody was putting pressure on them to not utilize local yellows when appropriate.
right. And I think a great example of this is going to come up at Road America,
Hmm.
right? We're talking about a 4 mile track.
Mm.
If every time a yellow comes out, it goes to a full course yellow, that's going to be a disaster.
It's going to be terrible. It would
Right.
ruin my favorite race.
So they're going to figure this out and they're going to use the procedures appropriately based on what's happening on track. In this situation, Detroit's a tight track. I mean, even the one where I said they could have maybe made that a local yellow, that's still two cars blocking the track after a blind corner.
Hmm.
It's a tough place. It might have been a tough situation, but they
And
need
look,
to.
we've seen radio errors this season. We've seen spotter errors this season.
Right,
We can't even just put it on. Yes, these are top tier drivers to be driving in this series. And when they see an obstacle on the road in front of them, they know to avoid it and are usually pretty freaking good at doing it. That having been said, if you are coming around a blind quarter and your radio is cutting out and you cannot hear your engineer telling you that somebody is there,
right. And
that's a
you've
really
got,
bad situation for everybody.
yeah, you've
And
got
that
yellow
happens.
flags waving, but yeah, you don't know what's around that corner. So yeah, we'll just have to monitor this going forward. I have a feeling they'll figure it out. These are smart people, Raj Nair and the people at the competition committee, they will figure this out and find the balance.
Yeah, all I'm saying is I think the yellow flags today were not as inappropriate as some and look, notably, obviously Kyle does not like these red flags because they cost him his chance to fight for the win. He really felt like he was going to be able to make a move there when the tires were right in that window, and by the
Right.
time they got restarted, that tire advantage had worn off. And that's a real shame for him. But I think an argument that we heard from both him and Brian Herta was that that's not what racing is about and it's not fair. It is what racing is about.
And racing's not
Incidents
fair.
incidents are a part of racing.
Yeah.
And to come into a race like Detroit and say, "Oh, it's not fair that my risky stay out strategy didn't work," is there are going to be cautions here. You absolutely know when you are running a long second stint and a short third, and Kyle had boxed himself into using those red tires. So he knew he had to run. He took that risk when he
Right.
put the primary tires on second. He said, "All right, if I am ending the race on reds, then I can't pit as early as Alex, who by the time Kyle changed his tires, we knew what Alex was doing. Obviously, Alex was going to pit before him. Obviously, we're at Detroit and there are yellows here frequently. You chose to take the risk. It did not pay off.
Yeah.
Bummer, but in my eyes, that is 100% a part of racing and a part of strategy. To say that teams who are running at the top shouldn't be banking on cautions is ridiculous. You're at Detroit, there will be cautions. Work them into your strategy.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to point out about this race today that I think we talked about on Wednesday, and yesterday was the tires actually were meaningfully different in this race.
They were. I finally got my wish. Firestone gave us two compounds with distinct advantages and disadvantages, and they put us in a position where the top two runners in the race, Alex Palou and Kyle Kirkwood, both wanted a different tire. That's fantastic. Depending
Right.
on your driver strategy or driving strategy, depending on this is absolutely wonderful. I love to see it. I hope Firestone continues to bring us fast alternate tires with a cliff and reliable primary tires. That is exactly what I want to see.
Yeah, because even if that yellow hadn't have come out and Kirkwood had gotten by Alex, then we would have had a really fun battle for those last
Hmm.
15, 20 laps of Alex, having his tires come in and Kirkwood's tires going away. And then, yeah, it would have
That's
been
why
great.
Alex chose those tires because
Right.
he felt anybody on the alternate at the end of the race would be struggling with them. And he knew that he on the primary, his preferred compound in general, he knew that he on the primary would be able to make some moves and pass. And we actually saw a mini version of this play out earlier in the race when he gave the position up to Will Power, when Will
Right.
was looking particularly racy. And Will eventually kind of hit something that looked like a cliff on those tires, and Alex starts slowly clawing him back. No, he did not make the position back before he went in, but I think if we're at the end of the race,
Well,
maybe
and they were both on the alternates at that time too.
they
But
were,
yeah,
but Alex manages his tires so
no,
beautifully,
and
right?
yeah,
And
we
Will was
talked about that
burning
during
while
the,
he was passing, and
yeah.
I think that we would have seen something that looked really, really similar to that toward the end of the race. And regardless of who wound up on top, it would have been super fun to watch. So
Yep. Speaking of who ended up on top, we had a pretty interesting podium this time, I think.
I should say so.
Obviously, Alex, running away with it. People are going to running away with it. He won by 3 seconds. It wasn't and the funny thing was in the press conference at the end, they said, well, you led 71 laps. He said, it didn't feel like it. It didn't feel, he said, we were always under pressure
Yeah.
during the race. And he was, they couldn't make a mistake in the pits. When he did make a mistake, he said that's why Power got past him. And then on one of the restarts, he made a mistake late that allowed Kyle to get closer to him. But everybody is trying to anoint Alex and say, oh, he's just on a different level and all this other stuff. And he keeps saying, we're just this much better,
Yeah. He
and
thinks
it's
the
falling
margins are
in our
razor
favor.
thin.
Right.
And look, the I hesitate to call this luck because it was a choice to be on the
Right.
primary tires at the end of the race, which means a longer stint. But he does it just seems like there's a little twinkle of something in the universe that kisses Alex Palou on the forehead when he wakes up every morning and says, "You're gonna have a great day, buddy."
Well, not every day, but on many, many days it happens. And it's funny because now he's sort of become the king of the streets. This is his third street course victory out of 4 races this year. And the
Pretty
one he did
amazing.
lose to Kirkwood happened because they trimmed the car differently.
Hmm.
He didn't have the top speed on that long straight in Arlington, and Kirkwood did, and that sort of made the difference, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. When talking about that after the race, Kirkwood said, he talked about whether or not it's frustrating to see Alex doing so well in these situations. And he said that frustrating isn't really the right word, that he likes to see it as motivation. He said it is in some ways disappointing to see Alex closing in on him on street races, which is, really his moment to shine. But he also says the improvement that Andretti has shown on ovals and road courses. He said he'd take the trade any day.
Yeah.
Frustrating though it may be to kind of I'm not I'm not saying he's losing his king of the street crown. It's been 4 races, but to see
Yeah.
Alex do so well at a place where he usually is able to pick up points on him is tough. And um, yeah,
Yeah.
at least they're getting better in other places. Is kind of his motivator there.
Yep. So yeah, and it was a decent day for Ganassi with Alex winning, obviously Kiffin ninth, but Dixon, unfortunately had that hybrid problem.
I know. Oh
He
my
was
God.
not happy.
Yeah. Did you hear?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure they cut his mic out toward the end.
Yeah, he was about
He
to go
was
off
he was
on.
mid-sentence, and I'm pretty sure they cut his mic out because what he said didn't make any sense. So yeah, he was, and you know what? At a day where everything else went so right for Honda,
Mhm.
I understand why they don't want to sit there and listen to a lot of engine and hybrid criticism because Honda had an incredible day.
Yes, they did. Not as good a day as I thought they would have, but pretty solid
Very
day.
strong at
Yeah,
Chevrolet's
seven
home
of the
race.
top 10 cars finishers were Hondas.
And of course, the Honda went on to take the day. And
Yeah.
we should take a break and listen to what Alex Palou has to say about what the Honda gave him.
I mean, especially this weekend because I was driving the Honda, so I'm sure we had like 50 or 60 horsepower more than
double
everybody
Honda,
else.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, we had double of
We
everything.
had
It was
double.
awesome.
We also had a little bit more push to pass than everybody else. Um, apart from that,
He's
no.
just joking.
Yeah, I'm joking, but yeah, I mean, whenever the car in front of you is faster, it just feels that it has more speed. I'm sure that's what I was saying about Andretti because they were actually trimmed here and they were faster on the straight than us, and I couldn't catch them. That's why Will and Kirkwood were so good on the back straight. But yeah, it's good. I mean, I guess it's a good thing if they think or if they know that I have more power, it's good. I'll continue to have more power until I can.
Yeah, so they're going to run this livery again.
Feeding the controversy a little bit, Alex, just leading
Yeah.
right into it. Somebody's told him about those Reddit comments about him cheating, and he's having a fun time messing with them.
Yeah. So a good day, great day for him, decent day for Ganassi.
Mhm.
I think Rahal, I mean Andretti, obviously getting on the podium again, that was big for them. Um, you know,
They would have had a real shot with Will if and
yeah,
we will talk about that incident toward the end, but they had a real shot of a podium at the very least a top 5 with Will.
yeah,
Hell, he could have been fighting for the win. And Ericsson
eighth.
finished strongly. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
top
they
10.
theoretically would have had all 3 cars in the top 10 if Will hadn't have gotten beaten up. So
Yeah,
I think that for Andretti, this is exactly what they needed to do at this race. I said at the beginning of the week, I was laser focused on them to see if they were able to put up or not, because if they were not, I was going to start counting them out. And I'm
yeah.
not. I'm not counting them out. Yay. Good
No,
job, Andretti.
we'll see where they stand on Wednesday when we release this round of the Rides and Drives IndyCar Team Championship. So,
I got to think this one's going to help them out. And then, speaking of a team who looked
yeah.
like they had all the momentum in the world and then lost it going into Indy. Wow, I'm so happy for RLL. Seeing Graham back on that podium, it just feels more and more like he belongs there.
Yeah, and he drove a great race. I love what he said after the race, and this leads into, I think, how we can talk about the Power
Hmm.
McLaughlin incident. But Graham said, look, he was really mad at Kiffin when Kiffin spun him because he
Yep.
said, that's early in the race. You're never going to make that move. You've got to give people racing room. He said, I like Kiffin, and it just made me really mad.
He said he has
Um,
a lot of respect for him, but he said multiple times the phrase he used was zero reason. There's
yeah.
zero reason to pull that move.
And
And
then,
he said a lot of people were racing kind of bullish today.
Right. But then he said, but I never hit anybody. And
Yep.
I raced everybody and I passed a lot of people. And he
Yep.
did. He made a lot of on track passes and on his way to this third place finish. So it was interesting because he said,
And
and
he
I,
defended well too. Sorry, I want to throw
yeah,
that out also. Having only 1 second of push to pass with both hungry McLarens right behind you, and to be able to defend, to hold on to that podium position in the world he was in right there, that's great.
yeah,
Congrats to him.
I
Excellent
think that
racecraft.
I agree. I think he drove a great race. I hope, putting his doubters on mute for a while
Hmm.
here because they've been critical of Graham, from the beginning, and
Yeah.
almost nothing you say, nothing he does is going to change that. But these results certainly allow him to just say, "Shut up."
Look, there are a lot of drivers this year who don't have 3 podiums.
Yeah,
There are a lot of top tier drivers who we talk about as championship contenders who don't have 3 podiums. So
right.
I agree. Graham deserves all the respect in the world, both for the way he drives and also for the way he works with his young teammates. Louis Foster looked really solid today. And you know what?
Yeah,
Louis was a little bullish. The
yeah.
move
He made
Louis
he
pulled
made
on
some
Marcus
aggressive.
Armstrong, I was a little surprised didn't get penalized. But you
Yeah,
know what? Watching, I think that did play into the way people drove for the rest of the day because that was early on, no penalty. All right, elbows out. Let's
yeah.
go. And Louis knew after that move that he was going to get away with some stuff, and he took advantage of it and capitalized. And
Finished
great
seventh.
finish,
Yeah,
great
finished
finish.
seventh. And Mick Schumacher was in line for a great finish if he had just been more patient. He didn't need to battle Malukas right there the way he did and take both of them out of the race.
He shouldn't have been. He shouldn't have been fighting David Malukas. Yeah, let's talk now that we've discussed the podium about 3 drivers who wound up not finishing or finishing well at the back that did at one point look like they might be fighting for it. And we'll start with Malukas, who
Yeah,
started at the very back of the grid and through an excellent strategy decision. He came
right,
in when Alex Palou did, even though he knew he was going to have to run the alternate. He
right.
still came in when Alex Palou did and took the gamble that there would be a caution. And hey, there was, pushed him all the way up to the front. All of this sudden, this guy who started the race dead last is fighting for a podium position. And you know what? When this fight starts, I say, sitting on the couch there, Mick's not a guy necessary. I'm not saying he's a bad driver, but he has not had enough primetime fighting in IndyCar for him to be a guy I trust here.
Right.
And
And I
David
was thinking,
talked.
yeah,
Yeah. David talked before Sancio or after Sancio, sorry, when he lost the race to Christian Lundgaard, gave up a position. He said there is a skill and a talent in knowing when to concede a position. And I think that Mick maybe learned that lesson here because losing a position to David Malukas is nothing that anybody would have frowned upon him for. I don't think he should have fought
right.
so
If he
hard. And
moved
I
from
don't think
second,
he should have fought so hard right there.
yeah, he was effectively in second place at that point, right? I think
I
Rossi
can't
was
remember if he was running.
if
Yes, because
Rossi was still,
Rossi was in second, but he
but
had the penalty.
right. So yeah, at that point, look, Malukas is fighting you hard. You're not going to make this corner. Step back, get through it, see where you end up on that. If you make third, fine. You have Honda power. He's got Chevy power. You should be able, fight when you can fight.
Hmm. Fight when
Um,
it's appropriate and know that sometimes you have lost the position and you would rather take third
yeah,
than potentially not
23rd
finish at
or
all.
whatever.
You know,
Yeah.
so I think that Mick made an error there. It really sucks for David as a fan of his. That's a bummer. I
Yeah.
love it, and not as a fan of his. I There's nothing I love more than a worst to first storyline. That's so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, but
So,
but speaking of people who got impatient and really
mm,
ruined their race and another person's race, I think Scott McLaughlin just lost his head there
Yeah.
somehow. I mean, to drive power into the wall like that. And I know afterwards he got on the radio and said, "Oh, Will moved into me." No, he didn't.
It
I mean,
didn't
you
look like it
pushed him
from our
into the
view.
wall and he had his front wheels lifted off the track because you pinched him. It was just unbelievable.
Ends
And then to
Will's
come back
race.
and hit him again.
Hmm. Yeah, ends Will's race. It's a bad look from a guy like Scott McLaughlin, who, y- he's not an older driver, but he has enough seasons under him now that I don't expect that kind of thing from him. He
Right.
said at the end of the 500 that he said going into the race today, he's adopted a bit of a I'm gonna throw it and I'm gonna crash or I'm gonna win attitude. And that's an oversimplification, of course,
Right.
but he's been using that kind of language, and I love that. I love the fire. I love the cheekiness, but
Yeah, but you can't be
you
running
have to be
guys
safe,
into the
man.
wall and you can't ruin your own race by
Especially a guy like Will Power. He's from Toowoomba. He's probably fought a kangaroo.
well, we all know how Aussies and Kiwis feel about each other.
Yeah, I
So,
guess that's true. Yeah, there's a little bit of animosity there. So, I don't know. But it's not what I expect from a guy like Scott McLaughlin. And I think that's really all you have to say about it.
yeah.
I hope
I
we don't.
mean,
I
Will
hope we continue to see him drive aggressively. I just hope that he
not
finds a
that
better
aggressively.
balance.
Yeah, and I think we're, going into next week's race in St. Louis, we're looking at a track that maybe is better for the Penske cars,
Hmm.
and hopefully these guys will be a little smarter. Uh,
Uh,
you know,
let's talk about smart Penske's. I
yes,
cannot believe, I absolutely cannot believe where Joseph Newgarden finished.
yeah.
That was wild.
Again, all he did was sat back, ran the race he knew he could run, and not and stay out of trouble,
Hmm.
right?
He knew he wouldn't have a speed advantage on anybody with the way he had to drive with the injured foot. What he chose to do was respond properly to any and all yellow flags to make sure he capitalized on them as much as possible. He raced when he felt he could, defended when he felt he could, conceded positions he knew he was going to lose. There were multiple times when you would see three, four, five cars just drive right by him, but then
Right.
he'd hold where he was. And the reasoning for that is not because he tried to fight and couldn't. It was because Joseph said, I don't have the speed. I'm going to let these guys go. I'm going to slot in here and then finish my best race.
Right.
Days
And
like today really make me, what is up with people who think that Joseph Newgarden has checked out or doesn't care? He would not have gotten in the car today if he didn't
yeah,
care.
and the thing is, a day like today, when you're New Garden, your 100% job is to minimize the damage, right?
Hmm.
You know you're not going to finish high here. Chevy doesn't have an advantage. You are in physical pain getting in that car. You're not going to be able to brake the way you typically can brake and this circuit because of the brace on your foot, your
Oh, I'm
ankle.
sure he was driving without the boot. I didn't
No,
see
I
him
know
take it
he
out,
didn't
but
have
yeah,
the boot on, but
the
I'm sure
boot
he had a
won't
brace.
fit.
I'm
Yeah,
sure he
but
had a
yeah,
brace
probably,
on.
yeah, there's probably some kind of brace.
So, so he probably didn't have 100% feel for the brake, but and it's just when you know you're going to have a bad day, the key is to make that day as not bad as possible, right? And to finish 10th is a good finishing position for him in this race.
I would venture to say great. I think 15, I think 20 would have been a decent finishing position for him in this race. To finish in the top 10, starting from near the back with a really messed up foot in the wrong engine
Yeah.
is really, really impressive. It this kind of watching Joseph get into the car today just kind of reminded me of the Indy 500 qualifiers from 2 years ago when he was knocked out of qualifying because of the disqualified from qualifying because of the penalty. And he decided to put on his running shorts and run laps around the track because, God damn it, Joseph Newgarden is going to race. regardless of how fast or slow he's going to go.
Mhm.
Um, Today he got in the car regardless of how fast or slow he was going to go and found all the upside in the world. Great day from him today. Great drive. And I really, going into the back half of the season with four short oval races, really looking forward to seeing him bring that passion and tenacity to the season because
Yeah.
I think he can really go somewhere with
Let's
it.
see
I'm
what
excited.
happens, how much he can heal between
Mhm.
now and next Sunday.
Yeah, that's true. We got
You know,
it's coming up pretty
but I
quick.
think that's a good race for him.
Yep.
That's should be a place where they do well. I think a couple notable people in this race that we haven't touched on that we should talk about. First,
Mhm.
just quickly, Felix Rosenquist
Hey, kiddo.
finished sixth on a track that he doesn't do well on a week that a driver, the Indy 500 winner, typically does bad at. He came
And
through
he
with a
started what,
real,
16th?
yeah, he had quite a climb.
Yeah.
So,
Very
um,
impressive from Felix Rosenquist, proving
yeah,
that that 500 win was no fluke or accident. He is a great driver, regardless of where you put him.
right. And I think the two McLarens of Pato and Christian,
Yeah. Yeah, look, it,
4 or 5, it's there they are again, right?
it's right where McLaren belongs. I feel it, I'm not unimpressed by them.
No,
The car is very good. The drivers are great. They're remarkably consistent. And watching Christian Lundgaard today, man, his racecraft is pretty top tier. There
yeah,
aren't a lot of other drivers in the series who can defend and attack like he can. I put him up there elite in terms of his racecraft whenever he's
yeah.
battling somebody side by side. I love the way he moves. So, but it's just not quite good enough, you know?
I was surprised that Pato couldn't take Graham, right?
Yeah.
Um, he had more push to pass. I think he had
Graham
21
was on the better
seconds.
tires.
Yeah.
Graham was on the primary, and both Pato and Christian were on the
Yeah,
alternate
and you
that
could
had gotten
tell
a little
again
old.
the end of the stint they went away. But, there they are again, 4 or 5. So, you know,
I think they had like 30 seconds of push to pass.
yeah.
Not an
But
insignificant, not like you had
does
one push. You had two,
doesn't
three
matter
pushes.
it doesn't matter how much power you have if you can't deploy it with the tires.
Yeah, that's true.
If you
That's true.
can't put it on the track.
That's true.
So, yeah, so I thought it was an interesting race, better than I thought. The track still doesn't thrill me. I don't think it looks good on TV
Hmm.
again. I would love to see it a little longer. It's the shortest track on the circuit. Yeah, we got passing, but it also forces people to make bad decisions.
Yep. It was racier than I thought it was going to be. Um, Many of the incidents, though, were things that I just thought never should have happened. And I think you're correct. A lot of that is because the track encourages you to make those decisions. And I also
Yeah.
thought, I said multiple times, man, this looks ugly. It's just ugly.
Yeah,
I,
driving in between parking garages and warehouses and yeah,
it
there's
looks very
they
Soviet.
do when they do the overhead shot, it looks great with the Detroit River there and Hart Plaza and all that stuff. But when you're showing street level shots of the track, it just doesn't show the city well. I know the president of the Grand Prix talked up how great it was afterwards in his press conference, and what else is he going to say at that point?
Yeah,
But
it's
and I know it was a great day for the city. A lot of people came down. It's a great event. I don't want it not to be there. I just want them to make it better. I want
yeah.
them to create a track that provides better racing and that showcases the city better.
Keep the fan experience the same. There are so many things to love about this race, but a
Yeah.
slight shift in where the roads go. And I agree with you. Adding a couple more, a 10 turn street circuit just isn't enough for me.
And plus all
I
the
would like 13 to 15 turns on my street circuits.
plus most of these are 90-degree turns,
Hmm.
right
Nothing very
right and left
exciting
hand.
about them.
Yeah, there's not enough to make it interesting. You look at the Arlington course and how interesting that was. A little
Hmm.
different because they're working around stadiums and parking lots, not just on streets. They
Sure.
had opportunity to move some things around, but I gotta believe there's a way you can make a more competitive Detroit course and a more beautiful Detroit course.
I certainly know you can make a more beautiful one. I don't know the road configuration of Detroit well enough to talk about how you would lay the road out or the track out, but I certainly know that you could make it more beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's a real shame that all we saw was just concrete block. It's,
Yeah.
just very bleh, bleh.
So, but good race, good result. Alex back in the front. Extended his lead a little bit.
It's been
Kirkwood
nearly a
moves into,
month since he had won. Nobody should have been surprised.
yeah, Kirkwood move back into second because of Malukas' bad day.
Hmm.
But, and we'll see where the teams shake out on Wednesday. But we have to figure out where we shook out after this race.
Well, I gotta tell you, Harv, it's not great. Not for either of us.
We were
Once
both,
again, once again, we both had some almost right until they weren't. But that's racing for you.
yeah,
So, and I'm going to tell you this right here and now, right at the top. I benefited last week from us both being in our indie feels and being like courteous to each other about the spirit of the prediction versus that whatever. No, it's over. I today am Scott McLaughlin. I'm putting it into the wall or I'm winning the race.
well, neither of us are winning the race this week because while I did have two people on the podium, I had them in the wrong place. So I had
Hmm.
Kirkwood winning and Palou second. I had Dixon coming in third, and we all know what happened there.
And
And,
I had Pelot on the third step of my podium, mainly because I was sure you were going to pick him to win. Um, but I do get a point for that for having him there. I had Power and McLaughlin on my podium, and you know what? They may very well both have been there if McLaughlin had decided to race a little bit differently, but he
yeah,
didn't. So I just wind up with the 1 point for Alex. You wind up with the two.
yep. And then biggest mover, I was looking really good with Davey. I
Very
was,
strong.
until I wasn't. And actually, you were looking pretty good with Ferrucci as well. He,
Santino had a really strong race until ran into some bad luck, some
yeah,
Detroit bad luck, but he moved really significantly. I think at one point he was up around 8, 9, 10 positions. We didn't talk about Santino yet. I hope that he can bounce back from this. I think he can. He's
oh
got a
yeah,
lot of races he likes coming up. For biggest best, I was banking on a team mistake, and I had Kyle Kirkwood, and there were a few moments where his team could have made better strategic calls based on what was happening around them, but he was like at Arlington, he is able to compensate for a lot because he is a
yeah.
very, very strong driver on street circuits. So no bust for Kyle.
And I had Louis Foster, who we already talked about, had a really nice race. So
Really strong
no bust
day
for Louis.
for Louis. And then
And
here's where we both got the closest, which is really exciting. And it's in the plot twist. I predicted that we would have 20% or 20% of the race maximum under caution. So 20 laps under caution maximum. We had 23.
and that's why you wanted that local yellow. So
Well, I wouldn't have minded. I will say the last two cautions came in the last 20 laps of the race, and they are what put it over the top.
yeah,
Um, so I wouldn't have minded if one of those yellows had been local, but obviously driver safety is my preference.
yeah,
I gambled 2 points on that, so I'm taking a -2, which means I am on the day at -1.
right. And I said that no Chevys would be in the top five and that only two Chevys would be in the top 10. And we had two Chevys in the top five and three in the top 10. So I lose 3 points for
You made a
that,
big gamble, and it
which
didn't pay
means
off.
I am -1 for the day as well. So you still lead
I do lead the championship. I
5
was
to 3.5.
Exactly. I was at 6 coming into the day with my -1. I am at 5. You were at 4.5 with your -1. You are at 3.5. Maybe we should stop taking these big wild gambles. And then one
Probably.
of us could earn some points.
Who knows? Ah, well.
My
So
strategy might change next week. We'll see. See where
we'll
we go.
see. But we'll take a look at that next week. We will be back Wednesday to talk about the Bommarito Grand Prix.
It's the Bommarito Automotive Group 500.
Ah, there you go.
So that's what we're calling that one. And we're really excited to watch it. It is typically a great race, and you get to say Bommarito as many times as you want.
That's right. So we'll be back Wednesday. We'll talk about our team championship standings at that point. We'll preview the race, and then we will be back into it next weekend to talk about qualifying and post race. Those will be interesting because of the late start times of both
Hmm.
qualifying and the race. So
Yep, we've got a
interesting.
4:30 qualifying on Saturday, not too out of the realm of usual, but we have a 9 p.m. Eastern race. Harvey's going to be on the road all weekend, so it actually is perfect for the two of us. We're pretty excited about it, and I just love a night race. The lights and the atmosphere is always really, really great. So we're looking forward to bringing you that. Follow us on social, Harvey_drives. Fast Car Kaz and Rides and Drives Team Radio is available on whatever platform you like. And you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or anywhere else that you like to get your podcasts. Please go on ahead and subscribe if you like or hate, rage hate listening to us talk about racing.
Yeah, if you hate it and want to comment, we'd love to talk about it. So, for Rides and Drives Team Radio, I'm Harvey, she's Kaz, and we are out.
Drive safe, everybody.